I'm Daniel, a 38-year-old architect with a penchant for clean lines and sturdy foundations, both in buildings and in life. My wife, Clara, is a painter, her canvases bursting with colors I could never dream up. We've been married for 12 years, living in a cozy Seattle home with a view of the Puget Sound. Our life was a masterpiece, or so I thought. Clara's laughter filled our evenings, her fingers smudging paint on my cheek during playful moments. We were partners, creators, bound by love and trust. But foundations, no matter how solid they seem, can crack. It started subtly. Clara began spending more time at her art studio downtown. She'd return late, her eyes distant, claiming she was chasing inspiration. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my muse, my constant. But then I noticed her phone buzzing at odd hours, her quick glances at the screen, the way she'd angle it away from me. I brushed it off as paranoia. After all, trust was our cornerstone. Yet, the air in our home felt heavier, like a storm was brewing. One evening, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. Dinner for two at a restaurant we'd never visited together. The date was a night she'd claimed to be at the studio. My chest tightened, but I didn't confront her. Instead, I watched. I observed her movements, her excuses, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. I wasn't ready to admit the truth, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Clara's art openings became more frequent, and she insisted I didn't need to attend every one. "You're busy with your projects, Dan," she'd say, her voice sweet but hollow. I started to feel like a guest in my own marriage. The woman I loved was slipping away, and I was too afraid to grab hold of her. But I wasn't blind. I saw the signs. The lingering scent of cologne on her scarf. The way she'd hum a tune I didn't recognize. Someone else was coloring her world now. By the time I decided to act, the betrayal was already a living thing, coexisting in our home. I needed proof, not just for my sanity but to understand how deep the fracture ran. I wasn't ready to lose her, but I wasn't ready to be a fool either. So, I began to plan, to dig, to uncover the truth about the woman I thought I knew. The storm was coming, and I was about to be at its center. The first step was to follow the thread Clara had unwittingly left behind. I wasn't a detective, but I had logic and a heart that refused to stay silent. I started with her phone, not by snooping, she was too careful for that, but by noting the times it buzzed. Late at night, early in the morning, always when she thought I was asleep or distracted. I installed a small tracker app on her device, disguised as a routine update. It felt wrong, like betraying her first, but I needed to know. The app showed her at the studio most nights, but sometimes, she'd detour to a neighborhood in Capitol Hill, a trendy area with bars and lofts. One night, I drove there, parking a block away from the address the tracker pinged. It was a modern apartment building, all glass and steel, the kind I'd design. I waited, my heart pounding, until I saw her. Clara, my Clara, stepping out of a sleek black car, her hair catching the streetlight. She wasn't alone. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, held her hand as they entered the building. My vision blurred, not from tears but from rage. I didn't confront them, not yet. I needed to know who he was, what he meant to her. I took photos, grainy but clear enough to capture their laughter, their ease with each other. Back home, I scoured her social media, cross-referencing her followers, her likes, anything that could identify him. His name was Ethan, a gallery owner who'd recently featured Clara's work. He was charming, wealthy, everything I wasn't. The realization cut deeper than I expected. Days passed, and I played the part of the oblivious husband. I cooked dinner, kissed her forehead, asked about her day. Each word was a lie, a mask to hide the storm inside me. Clara didn't notice, or maybe she didn't care. She was too wrapped up in her secret world, her new muse. But I was learning. Ethan wasn't just a fling. He was a fixture, someone she saw regularly, someone she chose over me. I began to piece together their routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays, they met at his apartment. Fridays, they dine at upscale restaurants, places we could never afford. I followed them once, sitting in a dark corner of a wine bar, watching them clink glasses, their knees touching under the table. It was intimate, deliberate, a dance I was never invited to. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was a rewriting of our life, a canvas where I no longer existed. I drove home that night, my hands shaking on the wheel, vowing that this wouldn't be the end of my story. Clara and Ethan had painted me out, but I was about to reclaim the brush. Living with Clara became an exercise in restraint. Every morning, I woke to her humming in the kitchen, brewing coffee as if nothing had changed. Her presence was both a comfort and a torment. I wanted to shake her, to demand why she'd chosen Ethan, why I wasn't enough. But I held back, wearing the mask of a devoted husband. I needed time to plan, to ensure my revenge would be as precise as a blueprint. I started gathering more evidence. I accessed her email through a shared laptop, finding messages from Ethan. Poetic, passionate, promising her a future filled with art and adventure. Each word was a knife, carving away at the life we'd built. She'd responded in kind, her replies full of longing, calling him her inspiration. I printed every email, storing them in a locked drawer in my office. They were my ammunition, my proof that this wasn't a mistake but a choice. I also tapped into her bank account, noticing withdrawals for hotels, dinners, even a weekend trip to Portland she claimed was for an art retreat. The money wasn't the issue. It was the secrecy, the life she was funding behind my back. I hired a private investigator, a discreet man named Paul, to tail Ethan. Paul's reports were clinical, detailing Ethan's habits, his business dealings, his other associates. Ethan wasn't exclusive to Clara. He had a history of charming artists, using his gallery as a hunting ground. This knowledge fueled my anger but also my strategy. At home, I tested Clara's limits. I'd mention Ethan casually, noting his gallery's success or asking if she'd seen him at events. Her reactions were telling. Flushed cheeks, a nervous laugh, a quick change of subject. She was good at lying but not perfect. I began to mirror her deception, staying late at my firm, claiming deadlines. In truth, I was meeting with Paul, plotting my next move. I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was studying my enemy, learning how to dismantle him. Clara noticed my distance but didn't press. Perhaps she was relieved, free to pursue her affair without guilt. Our conversations grew shallow, centered on logistics, bills, groceries, the weather. The intimacy we'd shared was gone, replaced by a cold politeness. Yet I kept up appearances, hosting dinner parties, attending her openings, smiling for photos. To the world, we were still Daniel and Clara, the perfect creative couple. Inside, I was a man on fire, burning with the need for justice. The cruelty of my revenge was taking shape, not as violence but as a calculated unraveling of their world. I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal, to lose what they valued most. For Clara, it was her art. For Ethan, it was his reputation. I was ready to take both. My plan required patience, a quality I'd honed as an architect. Buildings take time to rise, and so did my revenge. I began by infiltrating Ethan's world. His gallery, Luminary, was the heart of his influence, a place where artists like Clara flocked for validation. I posed as a potential investor using a pseudonym, James Carter, and contacted Ethan's assistant. My firm's reputation gave me credibility, and soon I had a meeting. Ethan was exactly as I'd imagined. Polished, charismatic, with a smile that disarmed. We sat in his office, surrounded by Clara's paintings, their vibrant hues mocking me. He spoke of expansion, of taking Luminary international, and I nodded, feigning interest. I asked about his artists, specifically Clara, praising her work. His eyes lit up, but not with professional pride, with something personal, possessive. It took everything not to lunge across the desk. I left with a handshake and a promise to follow up. My real goal was access. I'd slipped a small listening device under his desk, a gift from Paul's arsenal. It was risky, but the recordings were gold. Ethan's conversations revealed his arrogance, his manipulation of artists, his plans with Clara. He spoke of taking her to Paris, of showcasing her work in a solo exhibition. My wife, my partner, was his prize, and he was flaunting it. At home, I deepened my deception. I surprised Clara with gifts, a new easel, a rare book on Impressionism, acts of love that hid my intent. She was grateful, but her affection felt rehearsed. I used these moments to plant seeds of doubt. I'd mention Ethan's reputation, rumors of his close relationships with artists. He seems like a charmer, I'd say, watching her squirm. She'd deflect, but the cracks in her confidence were showing. I also reached out to Clara's art community, reconnecting with old friends, attending events without her. I became a fixture, the supportive husband who understood her late nights. These connections were strategic. I needed allies, people who'd vouch for me when the time came. I learned more about Ethan's influence, his enemies, his weaknesses. He wasn't untouchable, just clever. But I was cleverer. The listening device caught a pivotal moment. Ethan discussing a shady deal to inflate the value of certain artworks, including Clara's. He was using her talent to launder money, a scheme that could ruin her career if exposed. This was my leverage, the key to my revenge. I wasn't just going to end their affair. I was going to destroy their worlds. Clara would lose her credibility, Ethan his empire. I began drafting an anonymous tip to the authorities, but I held off. The timing had to be perfect, a crescendo that would leave them both reeling. I was no longer just a husband. I was an architect of their downfall, and my design was flawless. With each passing day, my resolve hardened. The evidence was overwhelming: emails, recordings, Paul's photos of Clara and Ethan in moments that should have been ours. I had enough to confront her, to end it all, but that wasn't enough. A confrontation would be too easy, too fleeting. I wanted Clara and Ethan to feel the betrayal as deeply as I did, to watch their dreams crumble as mine had. My revenge was a structure, each piece carefully placed, and I was nearing completion. I expanded my network, reaching out to art critics, collectors, even a journalist with a knack for exposing fraud. I fed them snippets about Ethan's gallery, never directly implicating Clara but planting doubts about Luminary's practices. The art world is a small pond. Ripples spread fast. Ethan started getting questions, his charm tested by skeptical investors. I watched from the shadows, my alias James Carter, still in play, offering just enough funding to keep him greedy, distracted. Clara sensed the shift. She was jumpy, her paintings darker, less vibrant. She'd ask if I was okay, if work was stressing me out. I'd smile, say I was fine, and change the subject. But I was watching her unravel. Ethan's stress was bleeding into their affair. The recordings revealed arguments. Clara accusing him of using her, Ethan dismissing her fears. Their paradise was fraying, and I hadn't even struck yet. I took a bolder step, meeting with a lawyer to discuss my options. Divorce was inevitable, but I wanted to protect my assets, to ensure Clara couldn't walk away unscathed. The lawyer suggested a post-nuptial agreement, citing changed circumstances. I presented it to Clara one evening, framing it as a practical move for our future. Her hesitation was palpable, but she signed, unaware that I was securing my financial revenge. If she left, she'd get nothing but her paints. Paul uncovered Ethan's final secret, a silent partner in Luminary, a man with ties to organized crime. This was the dynamite I needed. I crafted a plan to leak Ethan's dealings to the authorities, ensuring Clara's name would surface as an unwitting accomplice. She'd lose her reputation, her passion, her place in the art world. Ethan would face worse, legal trouble, maybe prison. I'd be the grieving husband, blindsided by my wife's choices, supported by the community I'd carefully cultivated. As I finalized my blueprint, I felt a pang of loss. Clara was still my wife, the woman I'd vowed to love. But she'd chosen Ethan, chosen a life that erased me. My revenge wasn't just for me. It was for the life we could have had, the trust she shattered. The storm was ready to break, and I was its architect, standing firm as the winds gathered. They'd never see it coming. The plan was in motion, but I needed to test its strength, to see how Clara and Ethan would react under pressure. I started with a subtle move, leaking a rumor through an art critic friend, Marianne, who had a column in a local magazine. I fed her a vague tip about irregularities at Luminary, hinting at inflated sales and questionable provenance for certain pieces, including Clara's. Marian didn't name names, but the article landed like a pebble in a still pond, sending ripples through Seattle's art scene. Ethan's response was immediate. The listening device captured him raging to his assistant, blaming competitors, demanding damage control. Clara, too, was rattled. She came home that night, her face pale, asking if I'd read the article. "It's just gossip," I said, stirring my coffee, my voice calm. "You're above that, Clara." Her eyes searched mine, looking for suspicion, but I gave her nothing. Inside, I was elated. The crack in their world was forming. I escalated by contacting Ethan as James Carter, expressing concern about the rumors. I suggested a meeting to discuss my investment, dangling the promise of funds to keep him hooked. We met at a sleek cafe, where he was all smiles, downplaying the article as petty jealousy. But his hands shook slightly, betraying his nerves. I asked about Clara's role in the gallery, probing for weaknesses. "She's our star," he said, his tone too warm, too personal. I nodded, hiding my fury, and left with a promise to wire funds. Funds that would never come. At home, I kept up the charade of normalcy, but I began to distance myself emotionally. I stopped asking about Clara's studio, stopped touching her hand during dinner. She noticed, her questions growing sharper, but I deflected with work excuses. The truth was, I was preparing to let her go, not just as my wife but as a fixture in my life. The postnuptial agreement was my safety net. Now, I was weaving a trap for her heart. Paul, my investigator, delivered a new piece of the puzzle. Ethan's silent partner, a man named Victor, was growing impatient with luminary scrutiny. Victor's money was dirty, and he didn't like attention. I saw my opening. Using an encrypted email, I sent an anonymous tip to a federal agent Paul knew, detailing Luminary's shady deals without mentioning Clara directly. The investigation would start quietly, but it would grow, and Clara's name would inevitably surface. I wasn't just breaking their affair. I was breaking their futures. The investigation began to take shape, though Clara and Ethan were oblivious for now. Paul's contacts confirmed that the feds were sniffing around Luminary, requesting financial records. Ethan's calls, captured by the listening device, grew frantic. He argued with Victor, promising to clean things up. Clara's voice appeared in one recording, tearful, asking Ethan if her paintings were safe. "Don't worry, darling," he soothed, but his tone was strained. Darling. The word burned through me. I tightened the noose by amplifying the pressure. As James Carter, I withdrew my investment offer, citing the rumors and instability at Luminary. Ethan's response was a desperate email, begging for a meeting, promising transparency. I ignored it, knowing his pride would take the hit. Meanwhile, I fed more tips to Marianne, this time about Ethan's personal conduct. His history of mentoring young artists, always women, always with strings attached. The art community began to whisper, and Clara's association with him started to taint her reputation. At home, Clara was a shadow of herself. Her paintings piled up in the garage, unfinished, their colors muted. She'd stopped humming, stopped smiling. One night, she broke down, confessing she was overwhelmed by the gallery's drama. I held her, my arms mechanical, offering comfort while my mind plotted. "You'll get through this," I said, knowing she wouldn't. Her vulnerability almost swayed me. But then I remembered Ethan's hand in hers, their laughter in the dark. I began to sabotage her professionally. I contacted collectors who'd bought her work through Luminary, posing as a concerned friend, warning them about the gallery's troubles. Some started asking for refunds, others distanced themselves from Clara's name. Her upcoming solo exhibition, the one Ethan had promised, was postponed indefinitely. She didn't tell me, but I heard it through the grapevine I'd cultivated. Her dream was slipping away, and I was the silent architect of its collapse. Paul uncovered Ethan's final vulnerability, a loan from Victor, secured against Luminary's assets. If the gallery failed, Ethan would owe millions he couldn't pay. I saw the endgame. The feds would seize Luminary's records, find Victor's money, and trace it to Ethan's deals. Clara's paintings, tied to those transactions, would drag her into the mess. She'd lose her career, her freedom, maybe both. I wasn't done yet, though. I wanted Ethan to know it was me, to see my face when his world crumbled. The noose was tight, but I hadn't pulled it yet. The strain was breaking Clara. She started staying home more, avoiding the studio, her phone silent for days. Ethan's calls had stopped, or she was ignoring them. I overheard her crying in the bathroom, muttering about mistakes and losing everything. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to pull her back to the woman I loved. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who'd chosen Ethan, who'd rewritten our vows. My resolve held. I pushed harder, orchestrating a public blow. Marianne's next article named Luminary explicitly, citing credible sources about fraudulent sales. The piece didn't mention Clara, but her association was enough. Social media buzzed, with artists and collectors distancing themselves. Ethan's gallery issued a statement, denying everything, but the damage was done. His bookings dropped, his investors pulled out. Victor, I learned through Paul, was furious, threatening Ethan directly. I decided to confront Clara, not with the truth but with a half-truth to test her. Over dinner, I mentioned the article, asking if she was worried about Luminary. Ethan's not what he seems, I said, watching her closely. Her fork froze, her eyes wide. What do you mean? She stammered. I shrugged, saying I'd heard rumors about his business practices. She changed the subject, but her panic was clear. The mask of our marriage was slipping. As James Carter, I sent Ethan a final message, revealing I knew about his deals with Victor. I didn't sign it as Daniel, but I hinted at personal knowledge, mentioning Clara's paintings in a way that implied intimacy. His response was unhinged, accusing me of sabotage, threatening legal action. I smiled, knowing he was unraveling. The listening device caught him yelling at Clara, blaming her for dragging him into this. She screamed back, accusing him of lying. Their affair was imploding, and I hadn't even shown my hand. I prepared the final pieces of my revenge. I met with my lawyer, finalizing divorce papers that would leave Clara with nothing but her tarnished name. I also drafted a letter to the feds, ready to send once the investigation deepened, ensuring Clara's role in Luminary's deals would surface. But I wanted one more moment, a personal strike. I planned to reveal myself to Ethan, to let him know the investor who'd ruined him was the husband he'd betrayed. The moment was close, and I could taste its bitterness. The day came to unveil my role, but I needed it to be precise, a strike that would linger. I arranged a meeting with Ethan, still as James Carter, at a quiet bar near his gallery. I wore a suit, my architect's precision in every detail, but my heart was a furnace. Ethan arrived, disheveled, his charm eroded by stress. He thought he was salvaging an investment. I was there to end him. We sat, and I let him talk, his voice desperate as he pitched Luminary's potential. I interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of his emails with Clara, photos of them together, and a summary of his deals with Victor. His face drained of color. "Who are you?" he whispered. I leaned in, my voice low. "Daniel, Clara's husband." The words landed like a hammer. He stammered, denying everything, but I cut him off, detailing how I'd dismantled his world. Rumors, withdrawals, the feds. "You took my wife," I said. "I took your life." Ethan's bravado crumbled. He begged, offered money, anything to stop me. I stood, leaving the folder. "You're done," I said, walking out. The listening device later caught him panicking, calling Victor, admitting he'd been played. I knew Victor wouldn't forgive. Ethan's days were numbered, not by me but by the monster he'd partnered with. Clara was next. I came home that night, finding her on the couch, staring at nothing. I sat beside her, silent, then placed a photo of her and Ethan on the coffee table. She gasped, her eyes meeting mine. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "Long enough," I said. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I told her about the divorce papers, the postnuptial, the investigation that would soon name her. Her tears came, but I felt nothing. She'd chosen this. I left her there, moving to a hotel. The next day, I sent the letter to the feds, sealing her fate. Luminary was raided within hours. Ethan arrested. Clara questioned. The art world exploded, her name dragged through the mud. I watched from afar, my heart heavy but unyielding. The revenge wasn't sweet. It was necessary. The fallout was swift and brutal. Luminary shut down, its assets frozen. Ethan faced charges of fraud and money laundering, his name synonymous with scandal. Clara wasn't arrested, but her paintings were seized as evidence, her career in ruins. Collectors shunned her, galleries dropped her. She moved out, leaving a note apologizing, begging for forgiveness. I didn't respond. Forgiveness wasn't in my blueprint. I rebuilt, focusing on my firm, my designs cleaner, sharper, reflecting my new clarity. Friends rallied around me, the betrayed husband, unaware of my role. The art community mourned Clara's fall, but I stayed silent, my revenge complete. Yet, late at night, I'd see her paintings in my mind, their colors faded, like the love we'd lost. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered. The weeks following Luminary's collapse were a blur of headlines and whispers. Ethan's arrest dominated the art world's gossip, his face plastered across local news as the gallery guru turned fraudster. Clara's name surfaced too, not as a criminal but as a tragic figure, an artist caught in Ethan's web. I read every article, watched every report, not out of pride but to ensure my plan had held. It had. Clara's career was ash, her paintings locked in evidence vaults, her reputation irreparable. I stayed in the hotel, my home now a relic of a life I no longer recognized. Clara tried to reach me, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to quiet resignation. I didn't answer. Her voice, once my anchor, was now a reminder of the betrayal that had reshaped me. Friends urged me to talk it out, to find closure, but closure wasn't what I sought. I'd built a monument of revenge, and I needed to see it stand. Paul, my investigator, kept tabs on Ethan's case. Victor, the silent partner, had vanished, likely cutting ties to avoid the feds. Ethan, left holding the bag, faced years in prison. Paul also tracked Clara, who'd moved into a small apartment, taking a job as a barista to survive. Her fall was stark. From celebrated painter to nobody, her talent buried under scandal. I felt no joy, only a cold satisfaction that justice, my justice, had prevailed. I began to reshape my public image, attending art events as a patron, not a husband. I donated to local galleries, earning praise as a pillar of the community. Behind the scenes, I sold our house, splitting the proceeds as per the postnuptial agreement. Clara got her share, but it was a fraction of what she'd expected. I used mine to buy a sleek condo, a new foundation for a life without her. Yet, the echoes of my actions haunted me. Late at night, I'd see Clara's paintings in my mind, their vibrant strokes a ghost of our past. I wondered if I'd gone too far, if my revenge had consumed me as much as her betrayal had. But then I'd remember Ethan's hand in hers, their laughter, and the fire in me would reignite. This was the price of their choices, and I was the architect of their reckoning. Clara reached out one last time, asking to meet. Against my better judgment, I agreed, choosing a quiet park near our old home. She looked different, thinner, her eyes hollow, her hands stained with coffee grounds instead of paint. We sat on a bench, the autumn air sharp between us. She spoke first, her voice steady but broken, admitting everything. The affair, the lies, the way Ethan had promised her a world I couldn't give. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, tears falling. I was lost, and he was there. I listened, my face a mask, letting her words wash over me. She asked for forgiveness, for a chance to rebuild something, even friendship. I looked at her, the woman I'd loved, and saw only the betrayal. You made your choice, I said, my voice calm but final. And I made mine. I told her about my role. Not the details, but enough. The rumors, the tips, the way I'd unraveled Luminary. Her eyes widened, then dimmed, realization settling in. "You destroyed me," she whispered. "You destroyed us," I corrected. I stood, leaving her on the bench, her sobs fading as I walked away. It wasn't closure. It was severance, the final cut of a thread that had bound us too long. Ethan's trial began, and I followed it from a distance. Witnesses painted him as a manipulator, using artists like Clara to fuel his schemes. Her name came up often, each mention a nail in her coffin. I didn't attend, but Paul sent updates. Ethan's defense crumbled, his charm useless against hard evidence. I'd ensured that evidence was ironclad, my anonymous tips leading the feds to every dirty deal. The art community moved on, new stars rising to replace Clara. I became a silent benefactor, funding scholarships for young artists, my name synonymous with generosity. No one suspected my hand in Luminary's fall, and I preferred it that way. My revenge was a shadow, unseen but ever-present. Ethan was sentenced to 7 years, his gallery's assets liquidated to pay fines. Victor remained a ghost, but rumors swirled of his displeasure. I didn't care. Ethan was gone, his empire dust. Clara faded further, her barista job replaced by odd gigs, house cleaning, dog walking. I heard she tried painting again, but no gallery would touch her. Her fall was complete, but it didn't fill the void I'd expected. My condo was pristine, my career thriving, yet I felt hollow. Revenge had been my blueprint, but it hadn't rebuilt what Clara took. I started therapy, not to confess my actions but to understand the man I'd become. Dr. Ellis, a quiet woman with sharp eyes, asked about my anger, my loss. I spoke of betrayal, of trust shattered, but never of the listening devices, the tips, the calculated ruin. Those were mine alone. I visited our old neighborhood, passing the park where I'd left Clara. The bench was empty, the trees bare. I thought of her laughter, our early days, the way she'd dance in our kitchen. That life was gone, burned away by her choices and my response. I didn't regret my revenge, but I mourned the cost. Not to them, but to me. I'd won, but at what price? My firm landed a major project, a cultural center downtown. I threw myself into it, designing with a ferocity that surprised my team. The work was my salvation, a way to create where I destroyed. But Clara's ghost lingered, not as guilt but as a reminder of vulnerability. I vowed never to let anyone close again. A year passed, and I was a different man, harder, sharper, but not broken. The cultural center opened to acclaim, my name in architectural journals. I was Daniel Harper, the visionary, not the betrayed husband. Friends tried to set me up, but I declined, my heart a locked vault. Love was a risk I wouldn't take again. Clara surfaced once more through a mutual friend. She'd moved to Portland, teaching art to kids, her paintings small and private now. She was surviving, not thriving, a shadow of the artist I'd loved. The friend asked if I'd consider reaching out, but I shook my head. Clara was my past, a lesson learned in fire. Ethan's prison letters reached me, forwarded by a lawyer. He claimed remorse, said he'd never meant to hurt anyone. I burned the letters, their words ash like his promises. Victor's name resurfaced in a news report, tied to a bust in another state. I wondered if he'd come for Ethan, but it didn't matter. My role was done. I started a foundation for emerging artists, funding those with raw talent but no connections. It was my atonement, not for Clara or Ethan, but for the part of me that had reveled in their ruin. The foundation's first exhibition was a success, young painters filling a gallery with color. I stood among them, anonymous, feeling a flicker of peace. My therapist asked if I'd forgiven Clara. I said no, but I'd forgiven myself. Revenge had been my right, my response to a wound that still ached. I was building again, not just buildings but a life, one where betrayal couldn't touch me. 2 years after Luminary's fall, I visited Seattle's art district, walking past the shuttered gallery where Clara's paintings once hung. The space was a coffee shop now, its walls bare of her colors. I didn't linger. My life was forward, not back. The cultural center was expanding, my foundation growing, my name a cornerstone of the city's creative scene. Clara sent a package, a small canvas wrapped in brown paper. It was one of her old paintings, a vibrant abstract from our early years, with a note. This was us before. I'm sorry. I stared at it, the colors a memory of love untainted. I didn't keep it. I donated it to my foundation, and signed, letting it live as art, not as a chain to the past. Ethan's parole hearing came and went. He stayed behind bars. I didn't follow his story anymore. My revenge was complete, its echoes faint. I stood on my condo's balcony, the Puget Sound glittering below, and felt the weight lift. I'd been architect, judge, executioner, but now I was just Daniel, a man who'd survived. The story of Clara and Ethan was a scar, not a wound. I'd crafted a revenge as precise as my designs, cruel in its justice, unusual in its execution. It hadn't healed me, but it had freed me. I turned from the water, ready to build again, my foundation stronger for the cracks it had endured.